So I wouldn't work for 40 hours. I wouldn't be making any money because when I don't work, I don't make any money. Not like somebody who can take a vacation and still get paid. So for that $2,000 was I going to lose worth hiring them for $3,000. And the time would have been huge because it wouldn't have taken me 40 hours. There's no way it would have taken me 40 hours.
Hello, friends. Welcome back to another episode of Beyond the Paycheck. I am back today with Paula as the producer, co-host person, I guess. And we have another question to answer today, Paula. Is that true?
We actually have 2 questions to answer.
We have 2 questions to answer. See, I'm already messing up. All right. What are the what are the questions and who are they from so I can do it in whatever voice of the day?
Okay. So the first question is from Andy, who we answered Andy's question, I don't know, a few weeks ago about buying versus leasing an auto. And she is contemplating buying, she's currently renting and she's contemplating buying a house, but she's concerned that interest rates are high and the homes and prices are still high. What should she do? And
Shout out to Andy for all the questions.
And then the second question is from, why am I drawing a blank? It is from Deanna, who wants to know about trust accounts and wills. And had some questions on that.
All right. Well, let's start with the buying versus renting, because I'm sure that is probably a very appropriate question for many people. I know the interest rates are going down, but still
not
high,
down enough.
And I know
yeah.
Stuff is still high out there. Okay. What is your take on buying versus renting?
Okay. So for me, when I got divorced and I didn't know where I wanted to live, what city I wanted to live in, what type of house I wanted, anything, I decided to rent because I didn't want to buy something because it was just after COVID and I didn't want to buy something to find out I didn't like the neighborhood, didn't like the area at all. So I decided to rent and it worked for me. And the pluses of the renting were if something broke, somebody else fixed it. And that is huge. Because I just had a power outage the other day, since everybody knows I bought a home. So I decided then through that 3 years that I was renting, I decided to purchase a home. And I had the same question that Andy did, which was, do I buy now because prices are high? And my interest rate that I locked in was 7%, which is high, concerning everybody else was in what, 2s and 3s. Mm-hmm. So I had to make the decision, do I wait? Or do I go ahead and purchase? So back to what I was saying before was had a power outage here and now my dishwasher and my garbage disposal don't work. Classic. So now Paula has to fix it or hire someone to fix it. So that sucks. But, it's so much easier to call Sid and say, hey, Sid, can you fix this? It's broken. But I had to make the decision if I was going to buy. And my friend Mark, my real estate agent, and not my real estate agent, my mortgage broker, and I had the conversations because rates were, I think they're a little bit even higher than 7% when I started looking. Mm. And he just says, Paula, you can wait, but if you find that home, it may not be there when you're ready. Yeah. So you can always refinance. So we're actually having those discussions as rates are starting to go down about when's the appropriate time for me to refinance, even though I've only been in here, 4 or 5 months. So I think the decision goes to, do you buy because you found that dream home, you don't want to rent anymore, and it doesn't matter what the price is, and it really doesn't matter what the interest rates are, because likely the prices will continue to go up, or maybe they'll even level off. But we all know interest rates are going to drop. They're starting to drop now. So refinancing is an option. So do you stay a renter? Well, I guess if you want flexibility where you can move anytime you want, well, I guess you can do that as a homeowner, but it's a lot easier when you're renting. Maybe you don't know where you want to live yet. Maybe you don't want to own a home. A lot of people don't want to own a home.
Okay, so if it's a pure numbers thing, right? So let's say right now you're paying $2,500 a month in rent. Mm-hmm. And how do you how do you quantify that? Because I hear a lot of people say, yeah, you can always refinance in the future, but yeah, in the numbers, it's going to come down. But is that a dangerous thing to rely on that? What if something happens?
Well, first of all, you're not going to buy a house you can't afford to make that payment. If you can't afford to make the current payment at the current interest rate, then you shouldn't be buying that house.
What if it's a stretch?
That's a toughie.
Yeah.
I guess you have to realize then what are you willing to give up to make it fit into your budget? Because it really comes down, you only have so much money coming in.
Yeah.
So you only have so much money to work with. Fortunately for me, my rent and my mortgage payment were relatively the same. So I don't know what housing looks like across the country, but if someone was paying $2,500 a month in rent, you could likely purchase a home. And
what? Go ahead.
And one of the nice things is, like, let's say you did purchase a home and maybe it wasn't ideally in the neighborhood that you wanted it to be or the city. You could always purchase that home, stay in it a few years, and then look to purchase something else in a different area. At least you're building equity into something where you're not when you're a renter.
Yeah.
And some people even decide to rent that house out and purchase their new homes and then have the renter basically making that mortgage payment for them. It's a great way to build equity in real estate.
What is your take on how much you should put down?
Well, if you don't put 20% down, then you end up with PMI. So I had to have this conversation with myself and my mortgage broker because ideally I was going to put 20% down. I had the money to do it. But I also knew that I needed things that I needed to get done. So what we decided to do is I think I only put 3% down, and then I kept the cash and I used the cash to make the improvements. And then I'm rebuilding my cash. And then when I go to refinance, I'll then put the 20% down when I refinance. But the PMI wasn't that high. It really wasn't. It wasn't enough to, say, oh my God, I got to put that 20% down. And eventually that PMI goes away when your equity that you've built into your home is below that 20%. I think everybody's situation is different. You just got to work with the numbers, work with a really good mortgage broker, and just work with the numbers to determine what's best for you and can get you in that house of your dreams.
I knew recently I heard of something similar where I didn't realize that when you refinance, you could put down a chunk of money.
Yeah.
So essentially you're refinancing at a cheaper price and a lower rate.
Correct. And then, you can always put more money on your principal to reduce down and get to that 20% faster if you don't plan on refinancing.
What do you suggest for I'm moving in? So the monthly numbers make sense. Cool. I'm good there. I'm going to put down whatever makes sense, X amount. What is a good keep for rainy day / your washer, dryer, dishwasher, and garbage disposal? Hypothetically, crap the bed.
Yeah. Well, since I've been here, my water heater is gone. Hopefully I have a friend of mine who's an electrician's coming over tonight. And maybe it's just, I'm just don't know how to look at the, whatever that box is called. What's that box called? Where you've got the switches?
Fuse box.
Fuse box. Yeah. Although I've done that, but hopefully that's all it is, that I avoided some place that there was something. But I would think, when you think about things that can go wrong, potentially a furnace or an air conditioner, but I know you can buy like a warranty when you're purchasing a home. But you think about those kinds of things. So even if you think you have $10,000 in the bank for just those kind of unexpected things that could happen when you're first moving in, because you really don't know what you're going to need once you get in there, even the cost of paint and everything. I mean, it all, if you're a new homeowner like I was, you had to buy a lawnmower. I had to buy all those things, tools, like I had to buy tools. So I would think at least a good $5,000 to $10,000 in a cushion.
Yeah.
And you should always have 3 to 6 months of emergency money. Always. And even if you don't, because some people don't, just start, and reward yourself when you get that first $1,000, because it just seems like that first $1,000 is the hardest month to get. But once you get it, celebrate it and just keep on doing it.
Don't celebrate by spending $997 on a vacation, though, because you'll be back
No,
at
no, no,
square
no,
one.
no, 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 no. Celebrate by maybe going to get an ice cream or going out to dinner or something like
Yeah,
that.
$6 ice cream.
Yeah.
I think it's a really interesting point because when you're renting and then you move to a house, you might have central air for the first time. And you don't, that's
most people have central air already, don't they?
Well, they don't have to fix it if it breaks, though.
Oh, no, of course, if it doesn't break.
Right.
Yeah.
So that is a whole thing. So I think that's an interesting point is it's almost like when you move into a place, all the stuff that's behind the scenes that's just running when you rent now becomes something that you have to be
fix.
aware of.
Mm-hmm.
What was the process for you? Did you do any research up front of, okay, these are the things that I've never experienced before. What are the average costs of that?
No, I mean, I was a homeowner before, so I kind of knew what that stuff was going to look like. And, it doesn't take much effort to just kind of Google, what does a refrigerator cost? What does a dishwasher cost? And you can kind of get an idea what that looks like. If you're going to be purchasing a house, you have a home inspector who goes through, and ideally he's going to tell you that some things are likely to go, Ideally, yes, he'll tell you. But, like my furnace and air conditioner are 8 years old. My water heater was 8 years old, but I guess they only have a life expectancy of about 7 to 9 years. So I just got hit with that one pretty quick. And luckily for me, I just went to Home Depot, bought a water heater, and had someone come in and hook it up for me. So it wasn't that expensive.
Yeah. Is there anything that, again, I know you've been through the process before, but is there anything that you wish you told yourself before this home purchase?
No. Well, I didn't know that I should have known some things.
What are those things?
Well, like when I had because I know I had to do some outside work. I haven't done anything inside, but I had to do some outside work. And so I had to get some stamped I had an aggregate cement patio poured. And I didn't realize the question I should have asked is, are you going to tear up my yard, the rest of my yard, doing that? And as they arrived and started working, I just went outside and just went, oh, shit. Then I got on to, does anybody know any landscapers in the area? Because now I need sod and stuff like that. And everybody's like, you can do that yourself. That's not that hard. And no, it's not that hard. But you also have to, for me as a female, I had to depend on men to come help or other females to come help me. And so I just opted to have someone come and do it for me because I'd have to buy all the stuff that you need to do it. Who knows if you're grading it correctly, and you can end up putting water where it's not supposed to be. And so I just didn't know that. So I think for me is the lesson I learned is when I'm hiring someone to do work for me is to ask more questions. But that question didn't even cross my mind to ask.
Understandable.
Yeah.
This is kind of a little off, but I think we can connect it. What is the conversation in your head when you are thinking about delegating something? Is it how long would this take me versus the cost of, how do you run that?
I do that all the time since I've moved in here because I'm like, can I do that myself? And if I can do it myself, how do I do it? Because I don't know how to do a lot of things. And, my ex-husband took care of a lot of stuff for us. Mm-hmm. And even I tried to watch and learn. So things like that, it comes with like the sod that was put in. And they ended up doing a little bit of other landscaping while they were here. I watched them do it. It took them a week.
Okay.
So could you imagine what it would have taken me?
A longer than a week, probably.
Like probably months, because they had all the equipment that they had to bring in the rocks and do all those things. I don't have that equipment, so I would have had to have rented it. Then I would have had to learn how to use it. Yeah. And then I would have, they were working a week during the day. So what is that, like an 8-hour day? So 40 hours it took them to do that process. I would only be able to do it in the evenings or the weekends. So it would have taken me months. So that was a simple one. Mm. But now I want shelves in this area, put into this like alcove area. I want these shelves put in. So I'm like, now I'm researching, do I hire someone to build the shelves for me or do I do it myself? Well, I'm back to that question because if I do it myself, I don't have a saw. You know, I have to measure correctly. I don't know what materials to buy, so I'd have to research that. Or do I hire someone? So I put it out to my friends that I don't want to hire someone to do it. I want one of my friends to come over who have the proper tools and teach me. So the next time I know how to do it myself. So I'm trying to learn from people who have those skills so that I don't have to call you next time I want something simple done that I can do myself.
Is there ever a question of how much will it cost versus how much will I save if I...
Oh, yes. Yes. Well, think about it. Time. It all comes down to time.
Right.
So if you figure out what your hourly wage is, and I'm just going to use simple, easy math. I'm going to use a large number. I'm not saying this is my hourly wage, disclaimer, but let's just say that you made $50 an hour and you had to take off. We'll go back to the landscaping. So it took them 40 hours. Well, at $50, what is that quick math? $2,000 bucks. So I wouldn't work for 40 hours. I wouldn't be making any money because when I don't work, I don't make any money. Not like someone who can take a vacation and still get paid. So for that $2,000, was I going to lose worth hiring them for $3,000?
Right. Yeah.
And the time would have been huge because it wouldn't have taken me 40 hours. There's no way it would have taken me 40 hours. And then I would have had to get help and renting equipment and all that other stuff. So it was well worth paying them versus me doing it myself. But something simple like, I'm trying to think.
Painting. I feel like painting's one where...
Painting's a hard one. Because I'm debating that too, because I got a quote to paint my entire interior, which was going to cost $5,000. And now I sit here and think, I could probably do that myself. I can paint, but it isn't the painting. It's the patchwork. Anybody can paint. It's patchwork. I mean, when you have, the prior homeowners holes in the walls or, nicks and dents and you got to fix those and they never look good unless you really know what you're doing. Trust me, I've had plenty of experience of painting. And then I think it's going to take him to paint my entire house. He said a week. And for me to do it, you're talking probably, 6 or 7 weekends. Yeah,
that's true. You're going to do like 1 to 2 rooms a weekend, maybe.
Yeah. If that. And then it's the whole thing about all the prep work and then the cleanup. The painting's not bad. It's just all the stuff that goes into doing the prep and cleaning. That's the worst part of it. But for a lot of people, they can't afford that. So that doesn't even become a question. They just figure out how to do it themselves.
I remember I lived with my best friend for a few years and we were renovating. He had a top up and down duplex. And I remember thinking all the time, we could just pay someone to do this, man. What are we doing? But he was in finances. So for him, it's like, no, we can do it. We can figure it out. We figured out some stuff, but we probably also cost him more money by breaking some stuff too. So.
Oh yeah. When I think about some of the things that I do, and I'm like, yeah, that wasn't right. Back to the store, think you're buying the right thing. It's not, but you already tried it, so you can't take it back. And yeah, I probably wasted quite a bit of money buying things that I thought I could handle on my own and really couldn't.
Understandable. Is there anything we haven't touched on about buying versus renting that you want to touch on? No,
I just think that, I think the American dream is home ownership, but it doesn't have to be. That may not just not be your dream. Maybe you're content just renting, So I think everybody's decision is personal, but whatever decision you make, just do your homework.
Always. Do your homework,
Always.
Plan.
Always. Okay.
I'm trying to think of like an off the wall question about, but this is a very, I guess it's not like the lease versus own for the car where there's like very, very fringe things. I feel like the home ownership and rent is pretty straightforward in terms of the differences and the similarities. Is there anything we're missing?
Well, I think there's like with home ownership, eventually it's yours.
Right.
And you don't have to make that mortgage payment again. Renters will always have to make a payment. Always.
Yeah. What do you think stops people that do want to buy a home? And you're not allowed to say prep. And you can't say prep for this. What do you think stops people that want to buy a home from ultimately getting it?
Wow. Money, credit scores. I mean, there's certain areas that income just won't support home ownership. I mean, think about, living in, buying something in New York.
Yeah.
That isn't, it's very difficult. A lot of renters there because property is so expensive. Where people like where we live, not so much. But I think, people who, I know that when I was renting, it was so freeing to just be able to walk away and go travel. I didn't have to worry about it. My home, I knew everything was going to be taken care of. If something broke when I returned, it was going to be fixed. I really had absolutely no responsibility. It's not the same here at all. There's a lot of responsibility that comes in home ownership. You rent, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah. So I have that conversation with people a lot, and I think that renting makes sense for some. And, if you don't, depending on where you live, it might be cheaper to rent than to buy. If you have to live in a certain area for your work, it might be cheaper to rent than to buy.
Yeah.
You don't want to take an hour commute just so you can live in an area where you can afford it.
What is because a lot of what we're talking about is the external circumstances of home ownership versus renting. What is the internal weight of home ownership versus renting? Because we were just talking about that, but I want to get more clear on that.
The internal weight,
Yeah, for me, if something happens, I just make a call and then somebody comes and it costs me $0 extra. So I don't really have to account for that at all.
Well, you don't need, money in a savings account for home maintenance.
Right.
That's one weight that's lifted right off your shoulders, and it's, a burden on me. So now I'm building a home maintenance account so that when things do go wrong, I not only have my emergency savings, but I'm now having a home maintenance account. And, everything is your responsibility when you own a home. Everything. Cutting the grass and, in Michigan, shoveling snow, and, the storm goes through and trees come down, cleaning it up, So it's just having all that weight on you. But even though I say that, I wouldn't change it for the world. I enjoyed both. I enjoyed renting and I enjoyed home ownership, but there's pluses and minuses. You got to figure out what works for you. I think if you can, I got tired of where I was living. I was living in a downtown area and it was noisy from the bars at night and the traffic and a bunch of drunks walking around at 2:00 in the morning. But I loved it. I could walk anywhere. I could go to the farmer's market. I don't have that here. I don't have that all those things that I used to love to do where I lived before. But I just got tired. Now, maybe if I had been, maybe not right downtown, but renting, a couple of blocks off the main street, it might have been a little bit different and I might still be there. I have to take that back. Probably not.
I was going to say, as you said it, for those just listening, as you said it, Paula started to question her own decision.
Yeah. Because I wanted grass for my grandkids and I was living in a high rise. So there was no grass. There was no grass for me to put my feet in. And, there just weren't, I couldn't even have a grill where I was living. So, a burger tastes so much better on a grill than it does in a frying pan, for sure.
Yeah, it's hard to barbecue indoors.
Yeah. So, there's pluses and minuses to both.
Well, a lot of things to think about for you if you're renting and you want to buy, or maybe you've already purchased and you own and you want to go back to renting. There's a lot to think about in today's episode.
There is. Thank you.
You want to close us out with a little official, give us a little official closeout?
Oh, how do I want to close it? Hey, if you have any questions that you want Kevin and I to ponder or answer, send me an email at paula@paulachristine.com.
Boom. We'll talk to you all next week.